Test 1, 2, 3.
Allt svenska i och för sig. Jag intervjuade henne för några veckor sedan på svenska. Men jag förstår att det är vissa.
Koska se on? Onhan se keväällä. Kyllä. Joo, ja kuvia. Ja, jag funderade också på det. I mörkare då naturligtvis. Men det blir ljusare på ett ställe. Ja. Tjej att man kan. vad är liksom strategi var? Jag vet inte. Ja, det är Du pratar ganska lågt.
Hey, good day everyone. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you all here today. As you know, this is the first time that we host Hanalys here in Stockholm. And dear Elina, welcome to Sweden. Let me begin by thanking you for our good talks, our friendship and cooperation. Since I took office, we have remained in contact, and you were the first colleague I visited, and one of our very first joint tasks was to have this joint meeting between our two governments in Stockholm. Mm-hmm. This morning, we started with a discussion about global support to Ukraine and international law, followed by a bilateral meeting. And I am convinced that Sweden and Finland need each other more than ever. Finland is Sweden's closest partner. We share not only values, but also interests and priorities. This is especially true when it comes to security and support to Ukraine. EU support to Ukraine must remain robust, substantial and long-term for as long as it takes. Countries like Sweden and Finland understand that geography matters. Stockholm and Helsinki are closer to Kiev than to Brussels. Now we urge others to step up their support as well. We need to continue to put pressure on Russia with stronger sanctions, tougher measures against Russia's shadow fleet, and to move forward and use frozen Russian assets for the benefit of Ukraine. This work will continue together with partners and allies. We are not only close friends and neighbors, but also allies in NATO, and therefore I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to Helsingborg in May next year, where the informal NATO meeting for foreign ministers will be held. Helsingborg is not only an important city in my home region of Skåne, it is also one of the oldest cities in the Nordic region with one of the world's busiest straits. Mm-hmm. It is the gateway to the Baltic Sea, and I'm looking forward to welcoming you to a strategically important location at the narrowest part of the Öresund Strait, an important shipping lane for both Sweden and Finland's trade and security. In these difficult times, we need partners, we need close cooperation, we need friends, and this is why I am so grateful for the very close cooperation that Sweden has with Finland, and we are determined to bring our countries even closer together. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Elina.
Thank you so much, Maria. So excellent to be here. Always a lovely pleasure to be in Sweden. And also congratulations on the meeting you'll be hosting in Helsingborg. What a great location you have chosen. And thank you also so much for the discussions. Every time we speak, we concentrate on the most topical issues. And ever so often, you find yourself agreeing with 100% with the other one has been saying. So this makes my life also easier because I will take everything what Maria said plus. So again, also very much thank you for organizing the Hanalys seminar here for the first time. I think it's just a fantastic testament to the very close cooperation and friendship between our countries, which of course has evolved over time. And now also when Hanalys was formed 7 years ago, we lived in a totally different world. And also the partnership between Finland and Sweden was based on more bilateral issues than now. Of course, we have the bilateral ones, but also especially in security, foreign security policy, we have NATO and that structure to build on. Now, our objective is peace for Ukraine, and the peace has to be just and lasting. Finland has proposed an unconditional deadline for the ceasefire, and the ceasefire needs to be unconditional itself. Ukraine has shown willingness to a ceasefire, and obviously it's Ukraine who has been wanting peace all the time. Now is very much the time to put increasingly pressure on Russia. And I think the strategy we have had as Europe, as the West, and as the coalition of the willing these days on three fronts. So essentially aiding Ukraine, at the same time weakening Russia through sanctions, and thirdly, to focus and ramp up our defense and deterrence. This strategy is exactly the right one. And this will run in parallel to potential negotiations what comes to a ceasefire and peace talks. But clearly we are far away from those. We witnessed what kind of a horrible strike Russia undertook just last Friday, with also children as casualties. And this just shows that there's only one aggressor to this war, and only one who is on a regular basis deliberately committing war crimes such as targeting civilian infrastructure. Russia will be a long-term threat to the Euro-Atlantic security, which will require not just now but also going forward decisive action. Finland announced last week that we will be from this on spending 3% of our GDP on defense. And this does not include our conscription-based army, which of course will remain a significant foundation of our security architecture as part of NATO. It is also very important that we focus on the long-term future of Ukraine. Ukraine currently hosts one of the most competitive defense industries in the world. We can learn so much both ways, and certainly also this will be key in the reconstruction of Ukraine, also going forward on the civilian side. Now, we also discussed regional cooperation. Finland is the chair of the Nordic Foreign and Security Policy Cooperation this year. The cooperation between the Nordic and the Baltic countries is truly valuable, and like Maria said, we are almost in daily contact with each other through one of the groups, if not bilaterally. And finally, in this time where some of the key principles of our security architecture and our way of life are truly contested, also in the thinking what comes to the trade and the market economy, our thinking is very much alike. We do think, and now of course speaking only for Finland, but a world in which we can freely trade with partners and allies makes also our value base, the democracy, the rule of law and human rights more, or they put this value base also in a better place for the future, because inherently going forward it's very difficult to protect these values if we don't have a strong economic base to back it up. So we need more trade between ourselves, and I think Finland and Sweden are a perfect example of this. Our two economies are very strongly integrated and interlinked, and we hope we can also in this lead by example. Thank you so much.
The floor for some questions. We start with Kauppalehti.
Joanna Palmen from Kauppalehti, Finland. I have a question on trade issues for both ministers. The EU is willing to negotiate on these issues with the Trump administration. What would be EU's kind of realistic aim in such negotiation? Is it to lower the tariff level, and if so, to what level? Or is it to get President Trump to give up the trade war?
Please. Well, thank you. Before I start answering, I have to say that we have a Minister for Trade who is responsible for trade-related questions with regards to the European Union, and at the end of the day it's our Prime Minister who is responsible for our EU policy. But having said this, I can of course comment on a very general level, and as I said, between the closest partners and allies, and indeed friends, there shouldn't be any trade barriers effectively. We need more interaction between each other and also certainly in economic terms. We have enough challenges in this world, and especially stemming from the autocratic nations, which I don't have to name in this room. So in order to be able to de-risk from those countries or even decouple in some cases, it just simply means that we need other channels to divert our business towards, and that of course would be naturally the transatlantic alliance. At the same time, as Finland, we do support opening up new trade channels and looking at new foreign free trade agreements with also other parts of the world, and the European Union is doing a fantastic job in opening new negotiations. We have to also fully implement the Mercosur free trade agreement, which has now recently been negotiated. And finally, I have to say on this specific topic, for a very long time I find myself agreeing with Elon Musk, who has proposed that there should be effectively zero trade tariffs between Europe and the United States. And this certainly is the goal we should aim at through these negotiations. But of course, the European Union now has to react to what the US has put forward.
And I completely agree with Elina.
So next question to The Guardian.
Hi. You mentioned the shadow fleet. Could you talk about what the latest is and the situation with that, and how you would describe the threat? And then also, what will Sweden do to respond to the Armed Forces report that Swedish defence is moving too slowly?
To what report?
The Armed Forces report that Swedish defence is moving too slowly.
Well, to start with your first question, the shadow fleet is a threat in several ways, not least environmentally. And since we imposed the oil price cap, the shadow fleet has been growing. And it's a threat to our underwater cables, which we have seen, even though it's not always the shadow fleet that is responsible. So we have to look at each situation individually and response in the correct way. And that is why cooperation, once again, is absolutely crucial, and we have developed a very close cooperation between the Baltic countries in order to be able to share information, but also react immediately and also follow these vessels as they move between different waters. And as regards the other report, I will have to refer to the Minister for Defence to answer that in detail. But we are ramping up our investments in military in a way that we have not seen since the Cold War. We are aiming at being able to comply with whatever goal the NATO will decide upon, but we have the financial measures to do so, and we're also in a very good financial situation compared to many other countries, which is an advantage in this situation. So we have doubled our investments in 4 years, and we will continue to invest in our military, which is a way of saying that, yes, we are willing to take a lot more responsibility for European security. We see Finland is doing the same and many other countries as well. And it is about time, because we have to show the US and many other countries that the security situation of Europe is of true importance to us, and we need to step up. Thank you.
Utiset.
One question in Finnish for the Finnish foreign ministers, Swedish television Finnish section. Mitä Suomi ja Ruotsi voivat yhä tehdä sen hyväksi, että Ukrainan auttaminen jatkuu riittävällä tasolla ja avulle riittää myös rahoitusta? Nythän on taloudessakin aika turbulentteja aikoja. Miten tämä vaikuttaa siihen?
No itse asiassa tästäkin tänään keskusteltiin, ja Suomi ja Ruotsi voi tehdä tosi paljon, paitsi tietenkin omalla esimerkillään näyttää, kuinka tärkeää on, että Ukrainan tuki jatkuu. Niin myös yhtä lailla puhua läheisten kumppaneiden kanssa, erityisesti EU-alueella. Me tuetaan vahvasti korkea edustaja Kallasin aloitetta paketoida tällainen kuin laajempi tukilupaus Ukrainalle. Olkoonkin, että se ei nyt siinä kokonaisuudessa toteutunut pari viikkoa sitten, mutta yksittäiset maat kuitenkin jatkaa Ukrainan tukemista joko puolustusmateriaalilla tai sitten niin kuin lähettämällä euroja. Ja tämä on tosiaan se suunta, jota pitää jatkaa. Ja tässä olisi erittäin tärkeää se, että jokainen maa osallistuisi BKT-avaimensa puitteissa, eli suhteessa omaan taloudelliseen suorituskykyyn, niin silloin se vastaisi sitä, miten myös aikaisemmin esimerkiksi Euroopan unionin puitteissa on vastattu erilaisiin kriiseihin.
And the last question to Svenska Dagbladet.
Hi, Therese Larsson, Hultin, Svenska Dagbladet. This is a question for both of you, but Foreign Minister Valtonen, you said earlier that you did not want to choose between social welfare and defense, and in order to be able to pay for it, you would need low tariffs and more trade, which is exactly the opposite of where we seem to be heading. Are you worried that Trump might force us make that decision between the two? And also, is there a risk that we forget about Ukraine in this turmoil, this global turmoil we see now?
Well, should I start? Okay. Could start with the first one. Well, first of all, engaging in a global trade war is the surest way to achieve a global recession, if not even worse. So certainly that will be a fantastic recipe to put down our GDPs, force down our GDPs, which will incidentally make it easier to reach any target related to GDP what comes to defense spending. So if we talk about 5% of GDP, if your GDP falls, then it's easier to reach that, right? But it doesn't make you any more capable militarily, which is, of course, the opposite of what we are truly trying to achieve. So the reason I brought it up is that this choice is genuinely non-existent because, well, Finland, since its existence, has invested very heavily in defense because of reasons which are obvious. And at the same time, we have been able to build a very successful welfare state. Now, unfortunately, in the past 10-15 years, Finland has had trouble with its economy growing for several reasons. Certainly, my government is now in the process of reforming the structures of Finland, which will most likely lead to better growth and a better future also in that regard. So the more economic growth you have, the less you will have to make that decision. And at the end of the day, of course, it's an existential question. And it is not just an existential question for Finland, but also the rest of Europe. Do we want to continue having a free democratic society based on human rights and the rule of law, or do we want to be subjugated by a power who is everything else but these? By the way, this is also probably the reason that Finland is the happiest country in the world, because we know that on the other side of the border, the world is more or less the opposite of what we want to be living in. So that's why defense is massively important. What comes to Ukraine, well, I think it is fantastic what we have achieved over the course of the past 3 years in terms of aiding Ukraine. And also the level of not just courage, but essentially true agency that Ukraine has been able to bring to the table over the course of the past more than 3 years. Because essentially when the war broke out, almost everybody thought that Ukraine would, fall within a few days or weeks. The opposite has happened, and certainly also with the help of so many nations around the world. And I think this is such a story which is very important to tell, that it is a success story anyhow, because there's no way Russia will ever be able to keep a country in which the people have chosen to live in freedom. There's no way Russia will be winning this war. So we might just as well, and like so many of us do in Europe and elsewhere, just keep on aiding Ukraine. That's just a moral thing to do.
Well, maybe to add to the second question, I believe that on one hand, economic growth is, of course, something that will increase our possibilities to invest in military, but also in the support for Ukraine. So if we impose more tariffs and barriers that lead to less economic growth or recession, then there will be less money to spend on these crucial things. On the other hand, I still see a huge support for Ukraine and their cause. I see that governments are now stepping up, giving more support to Ukraine, but also constraining Russia. One thing is the tariff threat from the US, but another thing is also the troubles we have with competitiveness within Europe. So even before these threats came, we were very troubled about the development with too little economic growth in the EU area. And so we really need to look into that. And as Mario Draghi report said, we have created administrative hurdles that eventually decreases growth. And this is a lesson that we have to learn despite of how the US acts. Thank you.
Something good might come out of this.
Always. I think that there could come some really good things out of this situation. One is EU unity. We have seen that after each crisis, the EU has become stronger. That is very good for Sweden and for Finland. And the other thing is that we will, I think, move forward much faster with free trade agreements with other parts of the world, like Elina mentioned, and that will be in the benefit of us all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.